Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here tonight, talking all about Sting. His DVD is going to be released, and tonight after Monday Night Raw, they had a sneak preview of Sting Into the Light, the DVD slash Blu-ray released, which I ordered mine through Amazon Prime. It is on the way. They did have a pretty huge price gouge on it on Amazon. They did not put the sale price on the Blu-ray until Sunday. I thought I had my order in time, that I would still get it on Tuesday, but they're saying that I'm not going to get it until Wednesday. So it is what it is. You can't win them all. But this is honestly one that I can say after watching the sneak preview here, I'm more excited about the Sting Blu-ray Into the Light documentary coming out tomorrow than I was not that long ago. In this, part of the documentary that they released to us, they gave us a large behind the scenes all access tour of Sting being picked up at the airport, being driven into the WWE headquarters, a lot like with the Ultimate Warrior, where they were filming his documentary as they were driving down the freeway, and he was telling his story about everything that had happened between there. There was a lot of things that I saw about this that was pretty much the same. This was Sting's first trip to Stamford, Connecticut. This was the first time that he said he'd even been close to there since a time when him and Luger were driving on the road. And as they were driving down the freeway, Lex, looked out the window and pointed, look, Sting, there it is. Lex Luger would leave WCW to head to WWE in like 92-ish, 93. He had his run there. He was the guy that a lot of people thought was going to be the next Hulk Hogan. It didn't really pan out the way they thought it was going to. Honestly, I think the writing was on the wall for Lex Luger when he did not win the title at SummerSlam 1993. I think after that, he still won the Rumble the following year in 94, tying with Brett, but not winning the championship at SummerSlam. It was sort of the writing on the wall. One thing led to another. He ended up going back down and joining WCW, of course, on the first edition of Monday Nitro. But a lot about the sneak preview was all about the reason why Sting never went to WWE before he finally did. And in this preview, basically, they're having him sit down. He's watching his last match from WCW, that last edition of Monday Nitro, his last match against Ric Flair. So much meaning was picked up into that. I know that when they were trying to put together that last edition of Nitro, there was feelings that maybe Eric Bischoff was going to stand up and he was going to buy the company. There was some people who thought that, they were just going out of business. A lot of the wrestlers didn't know that Vince had bought the company until they pulled up into the parking lot and the trucks were there. And they were like, oh shit. I've heard from some people that WCW still ran that last show like it was their last show. I've heard from some people that Shane McMahon was there and he had a hand in help booking the last edition of Nitro, making sure that the championship was on Booker T, because Booker T was a contract that WWE knew that they were going to pick up, and he would be an easy acquisition. And Scott Steiner was the guy who was sort of looked at as, we might not want this guy to come along for the ride. So once WCW would be relaunched, they would have a champion and not be having to start a new company. Well, start to revive an old company without the champion that was there on the last edition of Nitro. Sting says that it was hard for him to get into the ring that night. He just had so many emotions running through his body. Once he picked Rick up after the match when he got the win, they embraced. He said it was hard to keep the tears back from falling. He said that he called his lawyer and basically said that the way that his contract was done with WCW, WCW was going to continue to pay him until that contract was done, and Vince could not pick him up and just take him, seeing how he had bought the company. Sting says that he was sort of scared to go to WWE. This is like the $1 million question, because it finally gives us an answer. He said on the TNA DVD that he just did not feel that they were going to make Sting. They felt like it just really didn't matter. He was really offended when Booker T showed up and The Rock said, who are you, to him, trying to set up the Rock's catchphrase, which maybe Sting didn't know, but The Rock was such a big star back then that how would you not know that he was just doing his catchphrase? He did the same thing to The Undertaker, to Stone Cold Steve Austin, to Kane, Mankind, all of the big main eventers of WWE, all had got the Rock treatment in his promos, and Booker T was just, you got to think that if Booker T's coming out there on his debut of Raw and he's out there with The Rock, they're going to be making him look pretty good. So that's never really made a whole lot of sense to me. But Sting says that he felt that Vince wanted him to join the company just to undermine WCW and just be able to sort of wave something in WCW's face, like, look what we got. He didn't really want Sting to perform, or didn't really have any plans for what was going down, although that Jim Ross does step up to the plate and say that he did at times try to sign Sting and bring him into the company, and during his time as being the head of talent relations, he was unable to get Sting to sign the deal. He says that Sting's a very religious guy. At that time, they were running a lot of PG-13 and plus up angles, and Sting didn't know how his character was going to fit in because he didn't really want any of those shenanigans. When Shawn Michaels would make his return to wrestling in 2002, definitely during the DX run, Shawn Michaels made it well known that he was not going to be taking part in any shenanigans like that, and they always found a way to have Shawn Michaels on the show and not be a part of those things. Sting says that he sat back and his deal ended, and then his phone rang, and they said, "You want to come back for one more match?" And he said he ended up going back for one more match and ended up staying for 7 years, and that ended up being TNA. And then once his TNA deal was done, he said that he started talking with Triple H back to December of 2013 is when they had their first discussions, and Triple H was really adamant about bringing him in, and Sting's big thing was he didn't feel that his career was done. He felt that he could get into the ring at least one more time. He wanted to feel the magic that is WrestleMania, to be able to say that he always wrestled at one of these, and he didn't really know where he was going to fit in. He said that he wanted to wrestle a match against Taker. He wanted to wrestle a match against Triple H, and he would have took anything that they would have been able to give him. But it's really cool because throughout this whole thing, you see his first visit to Stamford, which is done right after they'd done the WWE video game commercial, which was the one last year. And I know that's when I sort of thought that he had signed his deal. But he doesn't sign his deal, but they have the camera crews following him around, almost like they know that they're going to be doing this documentary. They talk about the fact that he showed up at Comic-Con to sort of hype up the video game and future releases of his figures. Still hadn't signed a contract. They show him show up to Survivor Series. They show the black SUV pulled down into the bay. You see him jump out of the SUV. They shove him into this magical bus. We've heard this bus talked about a lot when like Chris Jericho talks about doing surprise appearances. This is sort of how they keep the secret talent away from the other talent, so that way no one's picking up their phone and calling the dirt sheets and letting the thing get out there. And the Sting thing, I think the buzz was out there that Sting was going to be at Survivor Series, but still when it happened, it was such a big shock. They put him in the bus. They basically, they have one of the guys go in and hand him, and they say, "This is your contract, if you want to look it over." And Sting says, "I haven't signed my contract yet. I haven't even talked to my lawyer. I tried to make this the biggest surprise as I could make it." And that's pretty cool. And then the writer gives him another piece of paper, which is just one paper. And he says, "This is the basic release that we give the one-time guys in order to, get something for their appearance." And Sting takes that paper and he signs it. He doesn't sign the WWE deal. He wouldn't even end up signing his WWE contract until, I believe they said, January of the following year, which would be getting him ready for the push to get them. He probably would have signed it right before he came back before the Royal Rumble, where he saved Dolph Ziggler, Eric Rowan, and Ryback's job. They ended up getting fired because of what happened at Survivor Series. They were able to jump into the Rumble, and I think it cooled off a lot of those guys, but at the same time, they worked an angle that they were able to bring Sting in, which ended up able to set up the Triple H match. But this is a really good one. Like I said, I'm not going to be getting it in the mail until Wednesday, thanks to Amazon Prime, but I'm all fired up for this one. It's going to be a good one. I hope you guys are picking it up, because it's going to be one of those ones that everybody has to have. There it is, boys. Right there. This is what everybody's talking about this week. Honestly, if you've been watching my videos for a long time, talking all about the rumors of Sting coming to WWE, basically, I got to the point when I basically said that there was 3 things that I wanted from Sting. I wanted Sting to sign with WWE, and then once he was in WWE, I wanted him to fight Undertaker, go into the Hall of Fame, and then have his documentary released through WWE DVD. And we've got 1 of the 3 completed. It's rumored as of right now that Sting is probably never going to face Undertaker. Vince McMahon and WWE feel that Sting might be a little bit too old to get into the ring with Taker and just not be able to have a good match. Sting versus Triple H played out very well at WrestleMania 31. They had the WrestleMania magic on their side. Sting versus Seth Rollins at Night of Champions didn't really have the same magic. Didn't really have a good match. Honestly, in my mind, it's one of the worst pay-per-view main events that I've seen in a good while, probably since Sting versus Jeff Hardy over there in TNA at Victory Road. But we'll put all that behind us because this is something that honestly I am very excited about. This is the 2nd release from WWE on Sting. This is going to be Into the Light is the name of this. It's a documentary. It's the one main thing that you're going to be going for. Of course, I believe last year, Sting, the Best of Sting, was released on DVD and Blu-ray. Pick that one up. But this is going to have, probably, I'm not 100% sure, but probably about 45 minutes to an hour of a documentary. I know that a few people have put reviews up. I did go and watch the WWE first look on the WWE Network, and some people say that's a way of ruining this for me, but honestly, it got me more fired up. You got a real behind-the-scenes look of Sting going to the WWE offices for the first time, meeting with Triple H, meeting with Vince, meeting with the people that were going to be making his merchandise, a lot like the Ultimate Warrior DVD documentary. But this is going to be very good to recap the career of Sting, of course, from about 2005 to about 2013. There's going to be a huge gap, but it should honestly be very good, and I'm really looking forward to this. Like I said, this is the 2nd release, but this is the first sort of Sting telling his story. On the last one, you just got some Sting, sort of clips real fast, talking about the match, and just in and out in under a minute. But you get the documentary, you get him talking about, things that are, really going down behind the scenes. Really, really good. You got some awesome pictures of classic Sting there, of course, with the blonde hair from the early 1990s of WCW, and then the character he would turn into in 1996 to fight the NWO, and then it would come to clash at the Starrcade 97, I believe. That was a long storyline. Basically not really using him. He wouldn't really have matches. He would just hang out up there in the rafters and show up, on Nitro, show up at a pay-per-view. Kind of a gamble on his point. You got to think you start this, you're not really working. I guess you're getting paid, and it is WCW, so it is what it is. But just what if WCW got cold feet and they just pulled out, and he just wasted that part of his career not really doing anything? Maybe he's just happy that he was cashing checks, and that's all that matters. But we'll run down this. These are all the things that are in the documentary. I don't want to really read these because I want to read. I want to watch and sort of be surprised as we go along. But it's kind of weird that you look that they're telling his story, and then in the middle you have these things that are like WWE Community Relations, WWE Summer Relations. Oh no, that's consumer products. Digital media, executive management. I don't know. I like it better when they don't put those gaps in the story. I like it better when they just tell the story straight through from start to finish and put all that WWE stuff down there near the end. But once you look at the matches, hopefully none of these will be, repeats, reruns from that Best of Sting that came out already. But you got some Memphis Wrestling in 1985, the Freedom Fighters versus David Johnson and the Invader, Blade Runners versus Tracy Smothers and Ricky Gibson, Sting and Rick Steiner versus Brad Armstrong and Tim Horner. Then we get into the NWA here. Sting versus Flair at the Clash of Champions, 88. Sting versus Muta at the Japan Super Show in 91. Anything with Muta and Sting, 5 stars in my book. Sting and Luger versus Steiner Brothers, WCW Super Brawl 91. Sting versus Cactus Jack, that'd be WCW Worldwide in 1991. This is a submit or surrender match. Then we're going to go over here. We're going to get to Sting versus Rude, Clash of the Champions 11 of 1992. Sting versus Vader at Slamboree 94. Sting versus Stunning Steve Austin, Saturday Nights 1995. Sting versus Hulk, WCW Nitro of 1995. Sting versus the Giant, Great American Bash 1998. Winner gets both tag team. Oh, God. This is honestly something that I wish I never remembered. Sting versus Goldberg. This is for the WCW World Heavyweight Championship. This is a WCW Nitro. If this is the match that I'm thinking of when Sting is in the Wolfpack, this was the bonus match on the Nitro 2 Blu-ray, and it was the best match on the whole thing. Sting versus DDP on WCW Nitro 99. Sting versus Bret Hart, WCW Nitro 1990, I can't tell. And Sting's WWE debut at Survivor Series 2014. Sting versus Triple H at WrestleMania 31. Some Blu-ray exclusives to make you pick up the Blu-ray. There's a NWA World Tag Team Championship match. Sting, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes versus Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard. Sting versus Flying Brian, King of the Cable Tournament matches on WCW Saturday Night. Sting versus the Steiner Brothers. Sting versus Scott Steiner. Got a hold of myself. Then we'll go Sting versus Booker, United States Tournament match, Spring Stampede 2000. Triple H and Sting face-to-face confrontation at Fastlane. Sting Speaks, Raw. That's, of course, when I think Sting came back and helped Randy Orton at the end of Monday Night Raw. And then we go Sting Into the Light on the back. Some really cool pictures of Sting, and let's look at them. Hey, they're all Sting this time, unlike the last one. But you got Sting Into the Light, WrestleMania. You get a picture of Sting with a light bulb. They highlight the Sting versus Muta, Sting versus Vader, Sting versus Flair, Sting versus Rude, Sting versus Cactus Jack, and some Blu-ray exclusives there. But we'll end it up just taking a look at that cover there. Something that, honestly, we never thought we'd ever see. Sting Into the Light. Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here with a review of the Into the Light documentary. Two of my friends, Jim Nye 888 and as well as Luke Cage 29, making his return to YouTube. He pops up every once in a while. Both have reviewed this DVD. I wanted to get my thoughts out there as well, but make sure you go out of your way and check out both of their reviews. They were both really, really good. Of course, I did an in-depth look into the Sting Into the Light Blu-ray set. Just the other night. Mine came in on Wednesday. I thought this was a very, very good documentary and DVD set as well. I watched this today on my day off, and I was very, very into the Sting Blu-ray set. I think it was a very good. I don't really put it into the top echelon of documentaries. This is one that I've been looking forward to for a real long time. So honestly, when I look into Sting's career, I don't think that they did the job that I was really looking forward to. I mean, it's not the way that I would have structured the documentary. I know that they try to make it seem like the WWE things in this documentary makes more, like it's must more see, because they sort of splice in what is going on in Sting's career today as you're going through his years at WCW and different chapters. I honestly like the documentaries where they just start at the beginning and go to the end. When those ones, you think of like the Shawn Michaels documentary, even though it came out a few years early. The Rock documentary, even though it came out before the biggest match of Rock's career at WrestleMania 28. The Stone Cold Steve Austin documentary is one that sort of bookends his whole career. Anything that Stone Cold Steve Austin does in the world of professional wrestling is not going to matter after the fact that Stone Cold's career ended at WrestleMania 19. He came back and did the Sheriff. That was one that sort of is the most perfect packaging of somebody's career in the world of wrestling. We may never see a Hulk Hogan one, but that's sort of another thing. You know, now that he's came back to WWE, if they would have made a Hogan set after around WrestleMania 30, they would have been able to show everything in his career, and it would have been one of the best ones as it is. But because of the Hulk Hogan mistake that he made, we may never see it now that he is out of WWE. Maybe we'll get another just mashup of mashes. Buy those. But I really want to see that Hulk documentary somewhere down the road. But the Sting one is the one that we're talking about today. It opens up with Sting talking about that it's going to be now or never, that he signs with WWE. This is a trip that he took to the WWE studios, or not the WWE studios, I apologize, but he went to the WWE headquarters to meet with Triple H, to meet with Vince, go over plans over what they could be doing with the Sting character in the foreseeable future. I believe on this trip they offer him a contract, and as you'll see, he doesn't actually sign this contract until January of this year, leading into WrestleMania, even though that he did a lot of things like Survivor Series, the WWE 2K video game, various, signings, various meet and greets, various appearances, such as going to Comic-Con, things that really blew Sting out of the water, making him one of the most talked about wrestlers there was. WWE.com met with Sting during this, and basically they said that since the 2K video game comes out, Sting has been in the top 10 most searched things on WWE.com at the date of his going there, which Sting is like, I've never even worked here. That's bizarre that they're looking for him, but they talk about the Clash of the Champions in 1988. Of course, that was the first real big match for Sting when he went in there against Ric Flair. In that match, he went to, I believe it was a 1-hour draw where Sting put the Scorpion Deathlock on Ric Flair as time expired, and it was sort of like the start of the real big push of Sting. When we talked about Sting versus Ricky Steamboat at the that would have been the WWE Rivalries show that was on earlier this week. That was sort of Ric Flair taking Ricky Steamboat, who was pretty green. He was a rookie at the time, and Ric Flair proving that he could make a star and have somebody that he would be able to sort of teach to work with him and be able to have competitive matches at that time. When they were wrestling for Mid-Atlantic for the television title back in the day. And I believe that's what Ric Flair was doing with Sting. He noticed that Sting had it. He was somebody that the fans were drawn to because of his neon colors, his wrestling persona where he did the pound on his chest, and it's just the yell into the heavens pretty much. But the Great American Bash of 1990 definitely was his first real... no, I apologize. The Clash of Champions of '88 was really definitely his real push. They were pushing him really hard before he had a knee injury, which sidelined him for about 5 months, where he came back at the Great American Bash. He would have a match against Ric Flair. This is when he took on the responsibilities of carrying WCW, winning the World Heavyweight Championship, and... from then it was on and cracking, where basically, at the Great American Bash, Jim Ross says it himself. Basically, you're seeing, one of the greatest wrestlers of the 1980s, which was Ric Flair, going up against the star who was supposed to carry wrestling in the 1990s, which would be Sting. And Sting overpowered him and became the guy to be the champion, where he moved on becoming the franchise guy. You'll hear stories about this in the bonus stories, which is like it's not, I thought I was watching the Blu-ray exclusives at the end, but it tends to me that you watch the documentary and then you watch the stories that they put on at the end of the documentary, where things that they talked about when they were filming it, but they just didn't see how they fit into there. He says that, they went to this convention, and WCW, got Sting all dressed up, and he got all painted, and they drove him there, and then once they got to the convention, they didn't really know where to go. So basically, he started taking this escalator up to the top floor, thinking that maybe he'd be able to find where he was supposed to go, and as he was riding up the escalator, he could hear Mean Gene's voice, basically saying that, welcome to the convention. We got a ring. We're going to be having wrestling matches. We're going to be giving away Hulkamania bears. Come meet Coco Beware. Come see Hulk Hogan. And WWE has Vince McMahon there, and they're just A+ on their appearance at that wrestling convention. And then you walk over to where WCW is set up, and they just basically have a podium, and on the podium it's got like a piece of poster board, and on the poster board is hand, just drawn with a pencil, Sting, the man of the Scorpion Deathlock, and has a scorpion drawn onto the piece of paper. They have just a television screen where they're showing the Best of Sting VHS, and Sting is just so openly embarrassed that WCW is coming off like this major Bush League deal that he just honestly just walks out on the convention, and Jim Herd gives him a call, and Sting just tells him that that they're coming off bad. There has to be some changes in the company. Jim Herd promises that they're going to step it up, and he says that they never did step it up and never really ever turned it around. But once he is the franchise of the company, he's in his on his property, I guess you can say, building a bonfire. And as he's building the bonfire, he's talking about the fact that he's, going into 1996, where Sting would take on the storyline of, basically all of his friends thinking that he turned on him because of the NWO and the fake Sting, and then, turning his back on WCW and all of the wrestlers, where basically he said he was a free agent. And he's talking about the promo where he's just, you're going to see Stinger pop up from here and now again, but he's doing this for a reason. He's not leaving. He's still the guy. He just needs to find out who he really is. And at this time, he's realizing that the Stinger, the California Surfer Sting character just wasn't going to be working in the foreseeable future. And then from there, you hear about Hulk Hogan says that at this time in the 90s, the baby faces of the 80s and 90s were starting to get turned on because the fans had really been able to see them overexposed for just way too long. And Hulk Hogan talks about the fact that guys like him and a guy like Sting were able to sort of reinvent themselves to the point where they'd be almost like a new character, but they'd be the same person. And that's what carried them on to wrestling and having a big career in the 90s. Because as you think of Hulk Hogan is the guy that when he left WWF at the time, and I believe 1992, maybe 1993 it was, Hogan and Vince both thought that the Hulk Hogan character was dead and they were not going to be able to get anything out of it. When he went to WCW in 1994, 1995, it had a little bit of fans behind it because fans still loved Hulk Hogan, but it wasn't like Hulkamania like it was in WWF. And it wasn't just because it was on the WCW brand and not the WWF brand. It just was, people had seen this, people had done this, and it was coming off this Bush League, and then they reinvented him as being in the NWO and things like that. That, of course, Sting would be the guy to fight the NWO, hanging out in the rafters, not really doing anything for an entire full year except showing up on a Nitro here or there, stopping an NWO beatdown, coming out and beating the NWO, doing some sort of a surprise to stop the NWO, which built them up to Starrcade of 97, which Sting talks about the fact that, he basically says that when they went out to the ring at Starrcade of 97, because of Hogan's, he doesn't say this, he just sort of implies it, and you can see it in his eyes, and you can see it in his face when he's talking about the match. He just basically says that when they went out to the ring, nobody knew what was going to happen. They didn't really even have a finish planned out. Eric Bischoff's telling the story that Hogan was trying to politic in order to have him win the match. Anybody who was watching WCW at that time knew that Hogan needed to lose that match. Sting needed to go over. It didn't make any sense for Hogan to win. And the shenanigans that WCW would pull off with this match over how big this was with, the referee, Nick Patrick, doing a normal count, and then Bret Hart throwing a fit, saying that it was a fast count, and then basically them having to, I believe that they redid the match on Thunder because they were launching Thunder on TBS that week, and then having, I think Hogan ended up winning the Thunder match, I think, and not even really going with Sting carrying the championship. It was almost like what TNA did with Matt Hardy giving up the championship after winning it at Bound for Glory this year. I don't know if that was some thank you to letting Bound for Glory run in Omega's backyard, and then sort of piggybacking off Omega's success and maybe Matt Hardy's connections in order to making sure that they were going to have fans there and they would have sponsors and this, that, or the other. But it just seemed like that was stupid to build just all the way up to this main point, then give the title to Sting, and then just take it away 2 days later and put Sting on the chase again. We already saw Sting on the chase for what was like well over a year because the storyline was going on the year before at Starrcade. I don't want to see this again. I want to see Sting carrying the belt. I want to see Sting beating the NWO, and I want to see Sting getting rid of the NWO. That doesn't mean I don't want to see Hogan. I don't want to see Nash. I don't want to see Hall. Just the storyline ran. It's over and it's done with. One of the main reasons why WCW died was because they just kept on trying to rehash what worked in the past. It's not going to work again. We've already seen it. It's over. It's done with. They get to the point with Sting watching the last Nitro, talking about how sad it was and just how hard of the match it was to get through. He seemed like he was happy that his contract was written the way it was, and he wasn't going to be able to be picked up by Vince. He did seem like he didn't really want to go to Vince because he didn't think that Vince was going to be able to use him right, and at the same time, it was at the time of the Attitude Era, and he didn't know where he was going to fit in with his Christian beliefs. It just gets us to him leaving to go to TNA, and then basically at this point is like in a movie when you find out that they showed you the finishing scene at the beginning. They build up the fact of what WrestleMania, was. And honestly, I haven't watched WrestleMania 31 since I was at WrestleMania 31. And I don't really know when the time's going to come up that I actually sit down and watch that whole show. And it wasn't that it was bad. I just maybe don't want to watch it back and not have the same feeling I had when I left WrestleMania 31 that day. But when they showed the footage of Sting versus Triple H, I knew what was going to happen. I know that DX was going to come out and they were going to attack Sting. I knew that NWO was going to come out and attack DX. I knew that Shawn Michaels was going to super kick Sting, but because I knew it, I was like, all right, come on, now here they come. And it's the way that they show it, with the different cameras that they show on the pay-per-view feed. I don't know if they call that the director's cut or whatever it was, but I was pumped and I was fired up and I had major goosebumps for that match. Like I said earlier, the Sting DVD is good. The Sting DVD is great. It's not a top 10 dog. It's probably one that I'm not going to watch, honestly, for a long time. But I'm really glad that it was there. Things that I would have added, it was maybe Sting talking about Great Muta and how much that feud meant to WCW at the time. If you watch the bonus stories on the end of the documentary, they'll talk about how great the Super Brawl 1991 tag match was between Sting and Luger going up against the Steiner brothers, where these guys rode together. They were the faces of WCW. It was a lot like if you go back and you watch on the Click documentary, the bonus match they had. I believe the match is it involves Razor Ramon, Diesel, Shawn Michaels, and Scott Hall, I believe, is who it is. One thing or another, and just how great these guys fit together, how well they were together. I gotta go, it's 15 minutes, but Sting Doc, I give it 2 clicks up.